let them hate you. You can't control how people feel about you. You can't micromanage their opinions or filter their judgments. But you can control one thing: the way you show up in the world. When you decide to live authentically, to speak your truth, to stand firm in your values, not everyone will applaud. Some will misunderstand you. Some will resent your courage. And some will outright hate you for it. But let them hate you. People's judgments are like reflections in a distorted mirror. What they see in you often has little to do with who you actually are, and everything to do with their own perceptions, biases, and insecurities. It's a fundamental truth that we often forget in the face of criticism or negativity. The opinions others hold about you can feel so personal, so intimate, that it seems almost impossible to separate their words from your sense of self-worth. But here's the reality: you can't control what others think or say, and trying to do so is a battle you'll never win. The only thing you can truly control is how you show up in the world and how you respond to the noise around you. Imagine walking through life carrying an invisible burden, a backpack filled with the expectations, opinions, and judgments of everyone you encounter. Each comment, each side eye, each whispered criticism adds weight to that backpack. The heavier it gets, the more you slow down, the more you lose sight of your own path. You start adjusting your steps, not based on where you want to go, but on how you think others will perceive you. It's an exhausting way to live, and it's a path that leads nowhere. The truth is, no matter how carefully you navigate, no matter how hard you try to please everyone, there will always be someone who disapproves. You could be the kindest, most generous person in the world, and still, someone would find fault. Why? Because their judgments are not really about you, they're about them. They're about their own fears, their own insecurities, their own unmet expectations. When someone criticizes you, they are often projecting their own internal struggles onto you. They see something in you that triggers something in them, and rather than facing it, they externalize it. Understanding this doesn't mean you ignore all feedback or refuse to take responsibility for your actions. It means you learn to filter out the noise. Constructive feedback, given with care and respect, can help you grow. But the kind of judgment that tears you down, that makes you feel small and unworthy, that's the noise you need to let go of. That's the weight you need to drop from your backpack. Think about the people who judge the most harshly. Are they the ones living their best lives, fully engaged in their own growth and purpose? Rarely. The loudest critics are often those who are most dissatisfied with themselves. Their judgments are a way to deflect attention from their own shortcomings. It's easier to tear someone else down than to confront their own fears and failures. So when you find yourself the target of judgment, remember that it says far more about the person doing the judging than it does about you. This is not always easy to accept. We are social beings, wired for connection and approval. From an early age, we learn to seek validation from others. We learn that approval equals acceptance, and acceptance equals safety. But as we grow, we realize that this need for external validation can become a trap. It keeps us small. It keeps us playing a role rather than living authentically. The more we rely on others to define our worth, the more power we give away. True freedom comes when we stop looking to others for validation and start trusting ourselves. Living authentically means being willing to be misunderstood. It means being okay with the fact that not everyone will like you, and some may even hate you. This is not a reflection of your value, it's a reflection of their perspective. The moment you start making choices based on your own values and desires rather than on what others might think, is the moment you step into your true power. It's important to recognize that trying to control others' opinions is not only futile but also draining. You could spend your entire life trying to please everyone, and you would still fall short. Why? Because people's expectations are constantly shifting. What pleases one person might offend another. Chasing approval is like trying to catch the wind. It's a never-ending, fruitless pursuit. Instead, focus on the one thing you can control: your own actions, your own integrity, your own sense of purpose. When you let go of the need to be liked by everyone, you make space for something far more important: self-respect. You start living in alignment with your own values rather than bending to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. You stop apologizing for who you are. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You start owning your story with all its complexities and contradictions. And yes, some people will judge you for it. Some people will hate you for it. Let them. Their judgments are not your burden to carry. Their opinions are not your truth. The only thing that matters is how you see yourself and whether you are living in a way that feels authentic and true. When you focus on that, the noise fades, the weight lifts, and you realize that the only approval you ever really needed was your own. Hatred often stems from fear, and understanding this simple truth can transform the way you view criticism, negativity, and the harsh judgments others may direct towards you. It's natural to feel wounded when faced with hostility, especially when it seems unprovoked or unjust. However, when you peel back the layers of someone's hatred, what you often find at its core is fear of the unknown, fear of difference, fear of vulnerability, or fear of someone else's courage shining a light on their own insecurities. When you recognize this, their hatred loses its power over you. It's no longer a personal attack, it becomes a reflection of their internal struggle. Think about the moments in your own life when you felt most critical or judgmental of others. More often than not, those feelings stemmed from something within you of fear or insecurity that their actions or words triggered. Perhaps you criticized someone for being bold because you were afraid to take risks yourself. Maybe you judged someone for expressing their emotions openly because you feared your own vulnerability. These reactions are human, but they're also rooted in fear. When people direct hatred toward you, they are often projecting their own fears outward. They see something in you that unsettles them, something that challenges their view of themselves or the world. Rather than confronting that fear, they lash out. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does offer perspective. It allows you to detach from the negativity and see it for what it truly is, a defense mechanism. When someone hates you for being different, for taking a stand, or for pursuing your dreams, it's often because your actions highlight their own fears or unfulfilled potential. Your courage reminds them of their hesitation. Your success shines a light on their doubts. Your authenticity exposes their masks. This can be deeply uncomfortable for them, and their response is to deflect that discomfort back onto you through hatred or criticism. This dynamic is particularly evident when you step outside societal norms or challenge the status quo. People fear what they don't understand, and they often respond to that fear with hostility. When you dare to be different, to speak your truth, or to live authentically, you disrupt the comfort of conformity. You become a mirror reflecting back to them the parts of themselves they'd rather avoid. Instead of facing their own fears, they choose the easier path to hate, to criticize, to tear down. It's a way of protecting themselves from the discomfort of growth and self-reflection. But here's the key: their fear is not your responsibility. You are not here to make others comfortable. You are not here to shrink yourself to fit into their limited understanding of the world. When you recognize that hatred is rooted in fear, you free yourself from the need to take it personally. Their fear does not define you, it defines them. Your job is not to soothe their insecurities, but to stay true to your path, regardless of the noise around you. This is easier said than done, of course. Fear is a powerful force, and when it manifests as hatred, it can be deeply hurtful. It's hard not to internalize it, especially when it comes from people you care about or admire. But remember, the strongest people are often those who have faced the most resistance. Every step you take toward your true self will be met with some form of opposition. Not because you're wrong, but because you're challenging the status quo. You're pushing boundaries, and that scares people. Consider the stories of great leaders, innovators, and change-makers throughout history. Almost without exception, they faced intense criticism and hatred. Why? Because they dared to be different. They dared to challenge the norms, to question the accepted truths, to stand up for what they believed in. Their courage exposed the fears of those who preferred the comfort of the familiar. But instead of being crushed by the weight of that hatred, they understood it. They saw it for what it was: a symptom of fear, and they refused to let it deter them. You have that same power within you. When you face hatred or negativity, take a moment to step back and ask yourself what fear might be driving this. What is it about me or my actions that challenges this person's worldview? This isn't about excusing their behavior or minimizing its impact. It's about reclaiming your power. When you understand that their hatred is rooted in fear, it loses its sting. It no longer feels like a personal attack, it becomes a reflection of their own internal struggle. This perspective also fosters compassion. It doesn't mean you have to tolerate harmful behavior, but it does allow you to see beyond the surface. You begin to recognize that those who lash out are often the ones who are most afraid. They are battling their own demons, and their hatred is a misguided attempt to protect themselves. This doesn't make their behavior acceptable, but it does make it understandable. And understanding breeds strength. It allows you to rise above the noise and stay focused on your path. In the end, the fear that fuels hatred is not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for soothing their insecurities or easing their discomfort. Your only responsibility is to live authentically, to speak your truth, and to continue growing, regardless of the resistance you face. When you understand that hatred is rooted in fear, you free yourself from its grip. You realize that their negativity is not a reflection of your worth, but a mirror of their own struggle. And in that realization, you find the freedom to keep moving forward, unshaken and undeterred. Living authentically is one of the most courageous acts you can undertake, yet it's also one of the most challenging. When you choose to be true to yourself, you inevitably disrupt the expectations of those around you. This disruption can provoke discomfort, resistance, and at times outright hostility. People often react negatively to authenticity because it challenges their own beliefs, insecurities, and ways of living. The reality is that not everyone will support or applaud your journey toward being your true self, and that's okay. It's not your job to fit into their idea of who you should be. Your responsibility is to live in a way that aligns with your values and purpose, regardless of the reactions you may encounter. When you choose authenticity, you're making a statement you refuse to conform for the sake of approval. You're declaring that your truth matters more than fitting in. This can be unsettling for others because it disrupts the social norms and unspoken agreements that keep everything in a state of predictable comfort. Many people live their lives in quiet conformity, following paths laid out by societal expectations, family traditions, or peer pressure. When someone breaks free from that mold and dares to live differently, it can feel threatening. It forces others to confront questions they may have been avoiding. Am I living authentically? What compromises have I made? What dreams have I buried? Your authenticity acts as a mirror, reflecting back to others the choices they've made or avoided in their own lives. This reflection can be uncomfortable. It shines a light on their fears, doubts, and unfulfilled potential. Rather than facing those inner conflicts, some people choose the easier path. They criticize or reject the person who embodies what they're afraid to confront. This isn't a conscious decision most of the time. It's a defense mechanism, a way to protect themselves from the discomfort of self-examination. Your courage to be yourself challenges the status quo, and not everyone is ready to face that challenge. Consider the dynamics of a relationship, whether it's with friends, family members, or colleagues. These relationships are often built on unspoken expectations and roles. When you begin to change, when you start living more authentically, you disrupt those dynamics. You might set new boundaries, express different opinions, or pursue goals that others don't understand. This can create tension because it forces others to adapt to a new version of you. They may feel threatened or confused, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're no longer fitting into the role they had assigned to you. Your authenticity requires them to adjust, and not everyone is willing or able to do that. In many cases, people resist your authenticity because it highlights their own lack of it. When you stand firm in your truth, it exposes the areas where they might be compromising theirs. This is particularly true when it comes to pursuing dreams or taking risks. If you decide to start a business, pursue a creative passion, or make a major life change, it can trigger discomfort in those who have chosen safer, more conventional paths. They may react with skepticism, criticism, or even resentment. Deep down, their reaction isn't about you, it's about their own fears and regrets. Your boldness reminds them of the dreams they didn't chase, the risks they didn't take, or the authenticity they sacrificed for the sake of approval or security. This is why living authentically requires a strong sense of self and a willingness to be misunderstood. Not everyone will see or appreciate the journey you're on. Some will judge, some will resist, and some will walk away. That's part of the process. Authenticity isn't about winning universal approval, it's about living in alignment with your own values and purpose. It's about being true to yourself, even when it means standing alone. The right people, the ones who truly care about you, will respect and support your authenticity. They may not always understand it, but they will honor it. They will see that your truth is not a threat to them, but an invitation to embrace their own. There's a misconception that living authentically means you'll always be comfortable or that the path will be smooth. In reality, it often means facing more resistance, not less. Authenticity disrupts the status quo, and disruption is rarely welcomed with open arms. But the discomfort is worth it, because the alternative, living a life that isn't truly yours, is far more painful in the long run. Conformity might bring temporary peace, but it comes at the cost of your true self. It's a heavy price to pay for the illusion of acceptance. The beauty of living authentically is that it creates space for genuine connections. When you stop pretending or playing a role, you attract people who resonate with the real you. These are the connections that matter, the ones built on truth, not pretense. The people who support your authenticity are the ones who will stand by you through the challenges and celebrate your growth. They may be fewer in number, but their presence is far more meaningful. Ultimately, authenticity is a commitment to yourself. It's a decision to honor your own journey, even when it means facing resistance. The reactions of others are beyond your control, and they are not a reflection of your worth. Their discomfort is theirs to navigate. Your job is to stay true to your path, to trust that the right people will understand, and to remember that the most important approval you can ever seek is your own. In a world that often values conformity over individuality, choosing authenticity is a revolutionary act. It's a declaration that your truth matters and that you refuse to live a life dictated by the expectations or fears of others. People will criticize your actions no matter what you do, and this simple reality holds a profound lesson about life, self-worth, and resilience. Human nature is inherently diverse, and opinions are as varied as the individuals who hold them. You could spend your entire life trying to please others, making choices designed to avoid conflict and seeking approval at every turn. Yet, no matter how carefully you navigate this path, criticism is inevitable. Understanding this frees you from the exhausting and fruitless pursuit of universal acceptance. It allows you to refocus your energy on what truly matters, living in alignment with your values and goals. Criticism often reflects more about the person giving it than the one receiving it. People view the world through their own lenses, shaped by their experiences, biases, fears, and aspirations. When someone criticizes you, their words are filtered through these personal perceptions. This means that much of the criticism you face is not an objective evaluation of your actions, but a projection of their own insecurities, expectations, or misunderstandings. Recognizing this can help you detach emotionally from negative feedback. It's not always about you, it's often about them. Take, for example, the way people react to someone pursuing an unconventional dream. If you decide to leave a stable job to start a business or travel the world, you're likely to hear a chorus of doubts and warnings. Some will say you're irresponsible, others will suggest you're wasting your potential. These criticisms often come from a place of fear that they themselves feel but haven't confronted. Your decision to step outside the norm challenges their worldview and forces them to question their own choices. Rather than facing that discomfort, they project their fears onto you. Criticism can also stem from envy or insecurity. When you succeed or take bold steps, it can trigger feelings of inadequacy in others. They may respond by trying to undermine your achievements or belittle your efforts. This is particularly common in competitive environments, where someone else's success can feel like a threat. In reality, their reaction has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their own internal battles. They may not even be fully aware of this dynamic. It's a subconscious attempt to protect their ego. Understanding this doesn't mean you should ignore all criticism. Some feedback is constructive and can help you grow. The key is learning to distinguish between the two. Constructive criticism comes from a place of care and is aimed at helping you improve. Specific, actionable, and often delivered with respect. Destructive criticism, on the other hand, is vague, personal, and often laced with negativity. It's intended to tear down rather than build up. When faced with criticism, consider the source and the intent. Is it someone you respect? Do they have your best interests at heart? If so, their feedback may be worth considering. If not, it's likely a reflection of their own issues, and you're under no obligation to take it to heart. Another important aspect to consider is that no matter what path you choose, there will always be someone who disagrees with it. If you play it safe, you might be criticized for being unambitious or complacent. If you take risks, you might be called reckless or naive. If you speak your mind, some will find you too outspoken. If you stay quiet, others might see you as weak or uninformed. The reality is that you cannot control the perceptions of others. Trying to do so is a losing battle that only leads to frustration and self-doubt. The more you try to appease everyone, the more you lose touch with your own authenticity. This is why it's crucial to develop a strong sense of self. When you know who you are and what you stand for, external criticism loses its power. You become anchored in your values and purpose, rather than swayed by the shifting opinions of others. This doesn't mean you won't feel hurt or disappointed by negative feedback. Those feelings are natural, but they won't define you. You'll be able to acknowledge the criticism, assess its validity, and then decide how to respond or whether to respond at all. It's also worth noting that the most impactful people in history were often the most criticized. Innovators, leaders, and change makers frequently faced intense opposition. Their ideas were challenged, their character questioned, and their actions scrutinized. If they had allowed that criticism to deter them, the world would be a very different place. They understood that criticism is part of the journey. It's a sign that you're pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo, and making a difference. The presence of critics doesn't mean you're on the wrong path often, it means you're on the right one. In a world where everyone has an opinion, the best thing you can do is stay true to yourself. Accept that criticism is inevitable, and use it as an opportunity to strengthen your resolve. Each negative comment is a chance to reaffirm your commitment to your path. It's a reminder that you're not living for the approval of others, but for the fulfillment of your own purpose. The more you embrace this mindset, the less power criticism will have over you. It becomes background noise rather than a roadblock. Ultimately, the only approval that truly matters is your own. When you look back on your life, it won't be the opinions of others that define your legacy. It will be the choices you made, the risks you took, and the integrity with which you lived. Critics will come and go, but your truth is enduring. Hold on to it, even when the voices around you grow loud. They may criticize your actions no matter what you do, but their words do not have to shape your journey. Being misunderstood is an unavoidable part of living authentically. When you choose to follow your own path, make unconventional decisions, or express your true feelings, there will inevitably be times when others misinterpret your actions or intentions. This can be frustrating, even painful, especially when it comes from those closest to you. However, it's essential to recognize that being misunderstood is not a reflection of your worth or the validity of your choices. Instead, it's a natural consequence of individuality in a world that often values conformity and predictability. Embracing this reality can free you from the constant need for validation and allow you to live more fully and courageously. People perceive the world through their own experiences, beliefs, and biases. No two individuals share the exact same perspective, and this means that misunderstandings are almost inevitable. When someone doesn't understand your choices or actions, it's often because they're interpreting them through their own lens. They may project their fears, insecurities, or expectations onto you, resulting in a distorted view of who you are and what you're trying to achieve. This is not something you can control, nor is it something you're responsible for fixing. Your job is not to ensure that everyone understands you, but to remain true to yourself, even when others don't see the full picture. Consider the dynamics of personal growth. As you evolve, your priorities, values, and goals may shift. This can be confusing for those who are accustomed to a certain version of you. They may struggle to understand why you're making different choices or pursuing new paths. Their misunderstanding is not necessarily a sign that you're on the wrong track, it's a sign that you're growing. Growth often involves stepping outside of familiar roles and expectations, and this can create discomfort for those who are not on the same journey. They may react with skepticism, judgment, or even resentment. This is not a reflection of your worth, but of their own difficulty in adapting to change. Being misunderstood can also be a sign that you're challenging the status quo. Many people find comfort in the familiar and the predictable. When you do something that defies their expectations, it disrupts their sense of order. This disruption can trigger defensive reactions, as it forces them to confront aspects of their own lives they may prefer to ignore. For example, if you choose to pursue a creative passion instead of a traditional career, some may interpret this as irresponsibility or naivety. In reality, their reaction may stem from their own unfulfilled dreams or fears about taking risks. Your authenticity highlights their own internal conflicts, and their misunderstanding is a way to protect themselves from facing those uncomfortable truths. It's important to recognize that you cannot control how others perceive you. Trying to explain yourself to everyone, seeking to correct every misunderstanding, is an exhausting and ultimately futile endeavor. People will see what they are ready to see, and their readiness is beyond your control. Your energy is better spent focusing on your own journey and staying aligned with your values. The people who matter, the ones who truly care about you, will make an effort to understand. Even if they don't fully grasp your perspective, they will respect your right to follow your own path. One of the most challenging aspects of being misunderstood is the loneliness it can create. There may be times when you feel isolated, as though no one truly sees or appreciates your journey. This is particularly true during periods of significant change, or when you're pursuing a path that others don't understand. In these moments, it's crucial to cultivate a strong sense of self and to find solace in your own inner knowing. Remember that your worth is not dependent on others' understanding or approval. The path you're on is yours alone, and it's okay if not everyone can walk it with you. This doesn't mean you have to navigate this journey entirely alone. Seek out those who resonate with your values and who support your growth. These connections may be fewer in number, but they will be more meaningful. Surround yourself with people who encourage your authenticity, even if they don't always understand it. These are the relationships that will sustain you through the challenges of being misunderstood. They will remind you that you're not alone and that your journey is valid. Being misunderstood can also be an opportunity for growth. It forces you to clarify your own values and to develop a stronger sense of self. When you face criticism or judgment, it's an invitation to reflect on your choices and to reaffirm your commitment to your path. Are you acting in alignment with your values? Are you being true to yourself? If the answer is yes, then others' misunderstandings become less significant. They are simply noise, distractions that you can choose to ignore. In many ways, being misunderstood is a sign that you're living authentically. It means you're not conforming to others' expectations or playing a role to gain approval. You're being true to yourself, even when it's difficult. This takes courage. It's far easier to blend in, to follow the crowd, and to avoid conflict. But authenticity is not about taking the easy path. It's about living with integrity and honoring your own truth, even when it sets you apart. Ultimately, being misunderstood is a small price to pay for the freedom of living authentically. The alternative, sacrificing your truth for the sake of being understood, leads to a life of quiet frustration and unfulfilled potential. When you embrace the reality that not everyone will understand you, you free yourself from the need for constant validation. You become more resilient, more focused, and more at peace with who you are. Your journey is yours alone, and it doesn't need to make sense to anyone else. What matters is that it makes sense to you. Letting people underestimate you can be one of the most powerful tools you possess. It may seem counterintuitive, even frustrating, to allow others to hold a lower opinion of your capabilities or potential. After all, we live in a world where we're often encouraged to assert ourselves, prove our worth, and demand recognition. However, there's a subtle strength in letting others misjudge you. It offers a unique opportunity to operate with freedom, cultivate resilience, and ultimately achieve your goals with greater impact. When people underestimate you, they create an environment of lowered expectations. This can be an invaluable advantage. In a world where pressure and competition are constant, the freedom to move without the weight of others' expectations can be liberating. When others expect little from you, they don't impose the same scrutiny or high standards. This gives you the space to experiment, take risks, and grow at your own pace. You're not constantly trying to meet someone else's vision of success. You're free to define it for yourself. Operating under the radar can also foster a sense of quiet determination. When people underestimate you, their doubts can serve as fuel for your motivation. Instead of feeling discouraged, you can use their skepticism as a challenge. Prove them wrong, not by engaging in arguments or seeking validation, but through your actions and achievements. This kind of motivation is deeply personal and powerful. It's not about seeking approval or applause. It's about pushing yourself to be the best version of yourself, regardless of what others think. Being underestimated often means people aren't paying close attention to your moves. They assume you're not capable of significant achievements, so they don't see you as a threat. This can give you a strategic advantage. You can plan, learn, and build without interference or unnecessary competition. By the time others realize what you're capable of, you've already made significant progress. This element of surprise can be a powerful tool. It allows you to stay one step ahead, turning others' underestimation into a tactical advantage. Consider the stories of many successful individuals who were once underestimated. They faced doubters, critics, and people who dismissed their potential. Instead of letting this discourage them, they used it to their advantage. They worked quietly, focused on their goals, and let their results speak for themselves. The underestimation they faced became a catalyst for growth and resilience. They didn't waste energy trying to convince others of their worth. They invested that energy in their own development, and their achievements eventually made the strongest statement of all. Being underestimated can also teach you valuable lessons about humility and self-reliance. When others don't see your potential, it forces you to find confidence within yourself. You learn to rely less on external validation and more on your own inner sense of worth. This fosters a deeper, more enduring kind of confidence, one that isn't easily shaken by others' opinions. You realize that your value isn't determined by what others see or believe. It's determined by your actions, your integrity, and your commitment to your goals. There's also a certain resilience that comes from being underestimated. Facing doubt and skepticism can be challenging, but it also builds strength. You learn to persevere, even when others don't believe in you. You develop a mindset that isn't easily swayed by external negativity. This resilience becomes an asset in every area of your life. You become less concerned with others' opinions and more focused on your own path. This is a powerful place to operate from. It allows you to stay centered and committed, regardless of the obstacles you face. It's important to recognize that being underestimated is not a reflection of your worth or capabilities. It's often a reflection of others' limitations, their inability to see beyond their own biases or experiences. People tend to judge others based on their own expectations and assumptions. When someone underestimates you, it's often because they're projecting their own fears, limitations, or lack of imagination onto you. This has nothing to do with your potential and everything to do with their perspective. Understanding this can help you detach emotionally from their judgments. You realize that their underestimation is not your burden to carry. Letting people underestimate you also creates opportunities for deeper connections and authenticity. When you're not focused on proving yourself, you can engage with others more genuinely. You're not trying to impress or seek approval, you're simply being yourself. This authenticity can lead to more meaningful relationships. People who see your true potential will gravitate towards you, not because you've demanded their recognition, but because they recognize something genuine and valuable in you. These are the connections that matter, the ones based on mutual respect and understanding, not superficial judgments. Ultimately, the most powerful response to being underestimated is to let your actions speak for themselves. Words and arguments rarely change others' perceptions, but results do. When you achieve your goals, exceed expectations, and demonstrate your capabilities through your actions, the underestimation becomes irrelevant. Your success becomes the most compelling argument. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your journey, your growth, and your achievements speak louder than any words ever could. In the end, being underestimated can be a gift. It frees you from the pressure of others' expectations, fuels your motivation, and builds resilience. It teaches you to find confidence within yourself and to focus on your own path. It allows you to operate strategically, surprise those who doubt you, and achieve your goals on your own terms. So let them underestimate you. Let them doubt you. Their opinions do not define you. Your actions, your integrity, and your commitment to your path are what truly matter. And when you succeed, you won't need to say a word. Your journey will speak for itself.